Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read S5 5084, Chapter 5. Brad Bill becomes very angry. Aunt Nora insisted on seeing me across the road to school, even though Brad Bill was with me, but he didn't seem to mind. Instead, he sniffed the air appreciatively. Strong breeze, bright sun, no clouds, a perfect day. I was really happy too, but there was something I had to tell him. Brad Bill, although I'm dressed up as you, I'm not the least bit like you, really. Actually, I'm not brave at all. And at school, I lowered my voice. A couple of boys called me the shrimp. They better not call you the shrimp while I'm around, Brad Bill cried, or I'll have them walking the plank. When we reached Rima's house, I said, Brad Bill, you stand here where she can see you. Then it'll be a great surprise for her. So Brad Bill waited at the top of a road. I rang Rima's doorbell. She answered the door. Dressed as Bart Simpson, she'd even covered her face in yellow powder. You look really good. So do you. Then she smiled sadly. So your magic cape didn't work last night. Oh yes, it did, I said. But my brother overheard us and sneaked in first. He's on Brad Bill's pirate ship right now. What a rotten trick, Rima cried. But I've got a surprise for you. For me, yeah, there's someone waiting for you at the top of the road. She gave me a funny look. Who? Go and see for yourself. Rima dashed out of her house, then let out a gasp of amazement as Brad Bill bowed to her. It can't be. Oh yes, it is, he said. The one and only, but this is just incredible, she cried. I've never met a real life, made a person before. She pulled out a little notebook. Can I have your autograph, please? Brad Bill signed his name, big bold letters in Rima's book. Oh, thanks, I treasure this. You cried. Treasure. Brad Bill's eye opened wide. Oh, I see what you mean. On the way to school, Rima and I had kept sneaking glances at Brad Bill. We just couldn't believe he was walking to school with us. We were walking through the gates when Elliot and Russell sprang out at us. They think they are tough. Today, they were both dressed as characters from Thunderbirds. Look at the shrimp, Elliot shouted. He doesn't look anything like Brad Bill, Russell sneered. Oh yes, he does, Rima cried. And you better be nice to Jamie because today he's got. Rima, I hissed. I told her we must keep Brad Bill's true identity a secret. Sorry, she whispered back. Why should we be careful? Russell demanded. What's the shrimp going to do? He and Elliot started to laugh. Then Elliot pointed at Brad Bill. And who is that? This is my friend William from far away who is coming to visit me, I replied. Ahoy there, land of lovers, Brad Bill said. I suppose you think that's funny, Elliot snarled. You don't look anything like him anyway. Brad Bill started to go bright red. And the Brad Bill story is really stupid, shouted Russell. Total rubbish, agreed Elliot. One more word, hissed Brad Bill. Now I'll chop you both up and eat you with chips. Oh yeah, cried Elliot, but he didn't say anything else because Brad Bill was glaring at him so furiously. Russell didn't say another word either. Not until he was at some distance from us. Then he called out, I think it's stupid. You're both coming as the same person, and why couldn't you come as one? Some addition, I saw Brad Bill's hands start to twitch. In another moment, he'd have turned off his iPad. Just ignore them, I said, please. No one speaks like that to me, Brad Bill declared. They speak like that to Jamie every day, Rima said, and he'd never stand up for himself. Why not? The Brad Bill wanted to know, staring right at me. I hung my head. I told you why. I'm nothing like you. Now just forget it and come and meet our teacher, Mrs. Davis. Mrs. Davis was already in the classroom, cleaning the board. Don't you three look splendid? She cried. I introduced her to William. Pleased to meet you, William, she said. At your service, ma'am. The Braybill replied, bowing very low. Mrs. Davis seemed a bit surprised by that. Then she asked Braybill where he lived. My home is the Seven Seas, ma'am, he replied. I sail them all year, except for the weeks when I'm on my own secret island, of course. By now, Mrs. Davis was looking totally astonished. But then Rima explained, he's pretending he is Brave Bill, the magic pirate. So I see, she murmured. Well, I haven't read the Brave Bill book myself. Then she glanced down at Brave Bill's hands and saw all his rings. My goodness, she exclaimed. Brave Bill grinned. It saves me carrying money. Well, we don't normally allow pupils to wear jewelry, Mrs. Davis said. But I don't suppose they are valuable. Not valuable, Brave Bill cried furiously. Then he murmured to me, your teacher is a fool. Luckily, the rest of the class began streaming in, and a number didn't come over. Say how good our costumes were. They especially admired Brave Bill's hat. Brave Bill sat between Rima and me, staring around him as if fascinated by what he saw. The morning Mrs. Davis told us to write a story about the character we were pretending to be, but there was to be no talking when we are writing. When Mrs. Davis says no talking, she means it. Soon everyone was working in silence except for Brave Bill. First of all, he didn't have a pen. It's all right. I've got a spare one, I whispered. But after a few minutes, he looked across at me. Can we swap? Your pen is blue, and blue is my favorite color. Yeah, sure. While we swapped pens, Mrs. Davis clicked the tongue with exasperation. A few more minutes went by, and Brave Bill still hadn't written a single word. Rima and I tried to help. You must have had a lots of adventures. Yeah, so I have, Bill replied, and I write them all up in the ship's log at night. I sit on the deck staring up at all those millions of stars. His eye was as bright as a star now, and I hear the waves lapping. Everyone is being very good, Mrs. Davis says at me, and doing their work and concentrating except for our visitor. She stared at Brave Bill. He glared back at her. Then he whispered to me, can we set sail now? Rima giggled, and I replied, you got to stay here until 3:10. But I'm bored already, Brave Bill cried. Mrs. Davis put down the paper she was studying. William, are you still talking? Yes, I am, he replied cheerfully. Well, you're disturbing the whole class. You wouldn't behave like this at your school, would you? I don't go to school anymore, ma'am, he replied. I left when I was 8. I think you're being rather silly now, replied Mrs. Davis. She called the Brave Bill silly. His face was bright red, and he was hissing really loudly. He sounded like a kettle about to boil. And then he pulled off his eye patch. Chapter 6. The Incredible Shrinking Teacher. Underneath the eye patch was an eye sizzling with rage. You have never seen such an angry eye. It twitched and rolled furiously, and then one of those sparks of anger shot right out of Brave Bill's eye. It was just like a tiny speck of very bright light, and no one noticed it spring out of his eye except Rima and me. She gasped, and I cried. No, Brave Bill, but we were too late. The spark set off like an arrow towards Mrs. Davis. One moment, Mrs. Davis was sitting at her desk as usual. Next, her head was just peeping over the top of it. She looked down at her chair. Her feet didn't even reach the ground now. Then she swung herself off the chair, gazed around, and gave a squeal of horror, and I didn't blame her at all. It must have been a really nasty shock for her. Shrinking like that, her clothes had shrunk as well, so they all still defeated her, which was one good thing, I suppose. The other good thing was she might have been smaller still. In fact, Brave Bill was about to shorten her even more, but I stopped him by hissing, no, don't please. He frowned. Her face was still a scorching red, but no more sparks flew out of his eye. Miss Davis It tuttered around her desk. The end.